to a brand new episode of Coming Distractions brought to you by the Nerdpocalypse podcast. I'm your host, Jay. Okay, guys, let's talk about Greta. So this is the psychological thriller written and directed by Neil Jordan and also co-written by Ray Wright. You might know Neil Jordan because he wrote and directed The Crying Game, which is a pretty famous movie that you should probably, if you've never heard of it, you should at least read up on it. So Greta stars Chloe Grace Moretz and Isabelle Huppert. Chloe Grace Moretz plays a girl named Frances who finds this purse on a subway. She sees it. She's like a goody two-shoes kind of person. She's basically playing a naive girl from kind of like, from California or the Midwest, and I don't really understand the dangers of the city. She has a roommate who does have a little bit more sense. Well, I'll get to that. But she finds this purse on the subway. She looks inside. She sees a license, and she looks up this woman, Greta, to return it to her. And she goes to Greta's house in New York, and she returns it to her. Greta is this like French woman, and she's like, oh, she's a sweet older French woman. She's like, oh, come on in, have some coffee, and I'm a really nice person. Thank you, you're so great. And they sort of develop this relationship. Frances's mother has just died recently, so she's still kind of bummed about that. Greta kind of fills that relationship a little bit, and Greta is this really like warm, loving person. But what you come to find out, and this isn't a spoiler because it's in the trailer, is that Greta puts these purses all over the city trying to get people to return them, right? It's just kind of to snare them in. And then it becomes a psychological sort of thriller in that Greta is like clinging to her, and she shows up at her job and she's threatening her and like, why won't you let me love you kind of thing. And it's weird. And there's slowly other things revealed about Greta's background and, you know, why she is the way she is, because she's a nutball. My review of this movie is that it isn't very good. It's arguably pretty ridiculous. Chloe Grace Moretz is phoning this in. I'm not sure that she's really capable of like that in depth of sort of emotion in a character. I haven't really seen that in her. Most people know her as playing Hit Girl from the Kick-Ass movies. But other than that, I really never found her to be particularly all that interesting. She sadly continues that streak here. She's just kind of like sleepwalking through the movie. And I don't know if that's more her or the character, because the character's kind of sleepwalking through reality and does things that don't make any sense. But if that was the reason they chose her, well, good on the casting, I guess. But she doesn't come across as very, very interesting. However, Isabelle Huppert, who I would argue is far and away out acting this movie and the material that she's given, is having an absolute blast. If you've never seen her in anything else, do yourself a favor. If you want to see a really twisted movie that she's in, go see Elle. It's incredible. Directed by Paul Verhoeven, who did RoboCop. Just saying. But she is out acting this movie in the same way that I think Denzel Washington was vastly out acting the material in the movie in and of itself of Roman J. Israel in the same way. She is giving 1,000%. She is having a blast as this villain who is just a total lunatic. The movie's biggest flaw, one, I think, was casting Moretz, just because she's not interesting, right? Even as a victim of this sort of thriller scenario, she's just not interesting. Like, she just doesn't bring it. Hubbard was a good choice, but the material is so bad, it doesn't help her any. She's just trying to elevate mediocre writing, in my opinion. The other thing that's quite interesting is the movie works at a breakneck speed to get through the story. I think it's 98 minutes, but it might as well be on like 2x speed. Like, it's crazy how fast like they meet and their relationship develops so quickly, and like they're playing the piano with each other, and it's like, you just met this woman 2 seconds ago. Like, it's really weird and really fast paced, and it's like, we got to get through it. And it feels rushed. It doesn't give any time to breathe. Like, it's just, you're never bored. right? You're never like, oh, well, this is just dragging. You're never bored, but that's not necessarily a good thing when you're trying to tell a story really, really fast and just rushing through it. It was like they were given a time limit before they started shooting, and they were like, we have to stick to this. Like, that's what it felt like. Yeah, it's got some like pretty funny moments in like the jump thriller kind of things. It's got some moments that are pretty like cringeworthy, like no one would do that. Like, don't do that. Like, that's ridiculous. I had the luxury enough to see it in a theater with people talking back at the screen, which if you're going to go see this movie, that's what you want. Because you want people to be like, what are you doing? Run, get out of there. Like, you want that, because the experience of sitting at home on your couch is going to suck, because it doesn't make sense. Like, just the character interactions sometimes just are bonkers. But if you want to see it because you're a fan of Isabelle Huppert, I'd say that's not a bad choice, because she's having a blast in it. It's like any classic actor getting to play a villain for a rare time. Like, when they're given that script, they just go for it, right? Like, so if you're going for her, that makes sense, but just know it's not a good movie. If you're for some reason going to see it for Grace Moretz, good luck. And if you're going for a Neil Jordan film, this ain't it. Like, this isn't it. He has better films. You should probably check those out. I'm going to give it a 1.5 out of 5. Again, I wasn't bored. I really enjoyed Isabelle Huppert in this movie. Everything else is not worth your time. 1.5 out of 5, and that's it. And we'll see you guys next time. You're watching the Nerdpocalypse YouTube channel. Make sure you click that button to subscribe and check out our weekly podcast where we talk about movie, TV, news, tech, and weird stories from around the internet.